I trusted them as family, until they made their move at my weakest point. This is Doreen revenge. When truth hurts, my stories heal. My name is Evelyn. My home was a happy home until I lost my husband. Paul was my life, my partner, my friend, the father of our 4 children, our oldest, David, just 10. Our youngest, little Grace, only 3. Our home was always filled with laughter, homework sessions, birthday surprises, and bedtime stories. Now, all of that felt frozen. The day Paul died, the house was full of relatives. Voices, footsteps, condolences. Everyone said, "We're sorry." But no one asked how I would survive, or how the children were coping with losing their father. I stayed strong for them. I had to. I had no choice. I carried little Grace in my arms while David tried to console his siblings, though his own tears were visible. Our middle children, Anna and Michael, barely spoke. They didn't understand death, only that their father wasn't coming home. Madame Ritter, Paul's mother, came to visit. At first, she hugged me and said she understood my pain. She spoke softly to the children, telling them they were part of a family that loved them. I believed her. A few days later, Madame Rita invited me and the children into the living room. She sat with her usual calm smile. "Evelyn," she said, "we need to plan ahead." "Plan ahead?" I nodded, too tired to question it. That's when I noticed the envelope on the table. Thick, neatly sealed. It hadn't been there before. "Don't worry," she said. "It's just paperwork." Paperwork. That word should have alarmed me, but grief had dulled my instincts. I was weak, I was exhausted. I was trying to hold myself together for the children. Rita slid the envelope closer. Her voice was soft. "These are just formal documents to prevent confusion later." I glanced at the children. Little Grace clutched my dress. David sat stiff, staring at the floor. They trusted me to protect them. I couldn't let them feel more pain. I picked up the pen she placed on the envelope. "You don't need to read everything," Rita said. "It's standard procedure." I signed. I didn't ask for legal advice. I didn't ask for time. I signed because I felt cornered, because I was weak, because I thought family wouldn't hurt me when my heart was already breaking. After that day, the warmth I once felt from Paul's family disappeared. Their visits became shorter. Their smiles seemed forced. Conversations stopped being about the children or memories. They became about plans and arrangements. One evening, David whispered to me while everyone slept, "Mama, are they going to take the house?" His eyes were wide, afraid. I held him close and said, "No one can take what is ours. We are together, and that's what matters." But inside, I felt the first seeds of doubt. I could no longer ignore the tension in their glances or the subtle whispers. I overheard. A week later, Rita called us to the living room again. Her calm smile was gone. She told me I would need to start preparing to leave. I froze. "What about the children?" I asked, voice shaking. "They will remain with the family," she said. The room spun. My heart felt like it was shattering. My 4 children, my life, my heart, my reason to keep going, they were being threatened indirectly. I wanted to scream, to fight, to run. But grief and fear froze me in place. I picked up my children after that meeting. We sat quietly in our room. Little Grace clung to my neck. David's hands trembled as he tried to comfort Anna and Michael. I held them all, whispering, "We will get through this together, I promise." But at that moment, I made a promise to myself. I would not disappear quietly. I would fight for us. I would reclaim what is rightfully ours. I didn't know how yet. I didn't know when. But I knew this. If they thought our silence meant defeat, they were wrong. And that night, as I looked at my sleeping children, I felt the weight of their lives on my shoulders. I knew the battle ahead would test every ounce of my strength. But I also knew I could not fail them. I stood there for a long time, watching my children sleep. I brushed my fingers across their foreheads, one after the other, memorizing them. 2 days later, Rita returned with others. This time, there was no softness in her voice. She told me plainly that the house no longer belonged to me, that arrangements were being made, that it would be best if I started preparing to leave. I laughed at first, not because it was funny, but because my mind couldn't accept what she was saying. I asked her where she expected me to go with 4 children. She replied that it wasn't her problem, that everything was already handled. When I asked about the documents, she gave it to me and asked me to read what I have signed. That was the moment my fear turned into something sharper. My hands shook as I opened it. Each line felt like a blow. The house, the accounts, the authority to make decisions. I had signed them all away. Even clauses about my children written in language so cold it made me dizzy. I sank to the floor. David found me there. He didn't cry. He didn't ask questions. He just sat beside me and leaned his head against my shoulder, like he was the parent and I was the child. "They can't take us, Mommy," he whispered. I held him and cried into his hair. That night, I started packing. Slowly, quietly. I folded clothes and tried to be strong, and Michael kept asking when Papa would come back. Grace refused to be put down. She clung to me as if she already knew. Before dawn, I opened Paul's letter. I had been too afraid to read it before, too afraid of what it might awaken in me. His words were steady, familiar, filled with a love that nearly brought me to my knees. He warned me. Not directly, but enough. He wrote about trust, about standing firm, about never signing anything I didn't fully understand. I realized then that they hadn't just taken advantage of my grief. They had planned this. When the confrontation finally came, it was loud. Rita accused me of being ungrateful, of trying to steal what didn't belong to me. She said I was manipulating the children. She said I should be thankful they were allowing me to leave peacefully. Something inside me snapped, not into rage, but into clarity. I told her I would not leave quietly, that I would not disappear with my children, as if we were nothing, that I would fight. She laughed. She said I didn't stand a chance. The summons arrived 2 days later. My hands shook as I held the paper, but I didn't freeze this time. I looked at my children, 4 small faces depending on me, and I made a decision. They had waited until I was weak to make their move. They didn't know I was done being weak. I packed some of our clothes, but I could not leave. I refused to disappear. I called the number in Paul's letter, his voice calm. In the courtroom, I stood straight. My voice shook, but it didn't break. I spoke about grief, about pressure, about signatures given in weakness. I spoke about 4 children who deserve stability, not punishment. Rita cried when the truth surfaced, when the letter was read aloud, when the judge asked why certain things were hidden. I didn't look at her then. I was too busy breathing. When the decision was finally read, my hands found Grace's hair. David squeezed my fingers and smiled through tears. Michael whispered my name like a prayer. We walked out into the light together. I didn't know what tomorrow would look like. I still don't. But as I stepped forward with my children beside me, I understood something clearly for the first time. They waited until I was weak to make their move. They didn't expect me to stand back up. They thought using my weakest moment as a weapon against me. They have won. Sometimes. I stare at Paul's picture and wonder if his death was actually natural. Or was any of his family members involved? Today, me and my children are happily living in our house, the place we call our home, the home they tried taking away from us. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, hit subscribe and join the family. More truth, more power, more stories coming.